Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bookworm's Book Corner, where we talk everything books. I am your host, Elizabeth Berg, and today we're going to be talking about a book that has taken book talk by storm. It has gotten a lot of mixed reviews, a lot of them good, but some of them not so good. And so I went and decided to check it out myself to see what we really thought. So, before we get started, get a drink of choice, get in your comfy clothes, and let's talk about books. Before we talk about what the book is, I do want to let you know there is a content warning for this episode. This book does talk about suicides, death, and addiction. So please be cautious when reading this book and also talking about this podcast. All right. Without further ado, let's introduce our star of the show today. Today we're going to be talking about E. Lockhart's We Were Liars. The other day when I went to Barnes and Noble, I saw this on the stand and I thought to myself, all right, let's just pick it up so I can see what it's about. And I ended up reading this in a day, in one sitting. I did not want to put it down. And it was around 1 o'clock in the morning when I finished this. So I started it after dinner, and then I read it all evening. And the next thing you know, poof, it was done. And I was like, I, oh boy, I literally was a mess. So, if you are new to our podcast, this is how this works. I introduce the book, we talk about the cover, pros and cons, and then I read the back of the book, and then I talk about what my thoughts were, and then finally, if I recommend it. So, as you can see, this cover doesn't really have a lot. It has the picture, and there's not really a book summary, which is one of my big cons of this book. But we're going to talk about that in a minute. So on this book, it has a picture of, looks like 1, 2, 3 people in the water, and it's kind of pretty. It's a little blurry. Doesn't really have anything like you're really like looking at per se. It's a little blurry, and in a good way, it kind of represents what the book is about. To be honest with you, and we'll talk about that as well as in a minute. Another thing, though, about this book is there's a lot of reviews. So there's a review by John Green on the cover, and John Green's one of my favorite authors. He wrote The Fault in Our Stars, or Typhos for those who are fangirls and fanboys, just like I am. Typhos. And then there's a whole, this, which is all reviews. And I got home and I read all of them, and I thought to myself, okay, if all these reviews are saying, popular places are saying this book is good, let's read it. So, pros. There are a lot of great reviews in this book. And another thing, too, is just like with the book 14 Ways to Die, we have short chapters. So, let's see, this is chapter 31, and so it's here, and then that's not too bad. Next thing you know, it ends right here. So it's about 3.5 pages long. One of the chapters, let's see, is literally a page. And so some of the chapters are pretty short. What I really like about this book is that it's broken into 5 parts. Each part represents a piece of the journey that our main character goes through. And there are 249 pages, 84 chapters in total, plus a bunch of extras in the back of this book, including an author's note, a reader's guide, and then things that go with the book, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, for my big cons about this book, there really isn't anything to the back. So when I look for a book, I don't just look at the cover. I don't just look at, who wrote the book. Because sometimes if I really like an author, I will just randomly buy the book before I even read about it, and I will investigate it for myself. But in this case, it really didn't do that. It had, if anyone asks you how it ends, just lie. We are the Sinclairs. We live, at least in summertime, on a private island off the coast of Massachusetts. Perhaps that's all you need to know, except some of us are liars. Now, that that isn't bad. Okay, I'll say it. It's not bad. But it didn't really give me that, I want to read that type of feeling that I really, really want. And sometimes when I look for a book cover or a book jacket, I prefer things to really go a little into the detail so that way I can get an idea of what I'm getting into. So I ended up writing one, and then on the review that I'm going to read, this also will so this way you can see there's a couple different pieces I want to focus at. So some of the reviews, and one of my favorite ones is, let's see here. So surprising, thrilling, and beautifully executed in a spare, precise, and lyrical prose. Lockhart spins a tragic family drama, the roots of which go back generations. And the ending? Shh, not telling, but it's a doozy. It's poised to be a big book list. Starred John Green wrote, thrilling, beautiful, and blisteringly smart, We Are Liars is utterly unforgettable. I completely agree. This book, I will just say this before we go any further. This book, one of the words that described it is haunting, and for the past few days after I finished this book, I still am haunted by the ending. This is what I wrote. And our main character's name is Katie. I wrote, after a terrible accident, Katie returns to a beach where it happened, but she can't remember what the accident was. She can't remember anything, and she's trying to place or piece together what happened that nobody talks about. So, my friends and followers, this book is definitely a mixed bag of emotions. It's a romance, it's a mystery all wrapped together, and you're trying to piece together what happened from an unreliable narrator, making it difficult to understand. So, in high school, for example, I read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and obviously you have an unreliable narrator. So, I'm familiar with unreliable narrators, but this one, it was like you were trying to understand what she was saying. At the same time, you knew you couldn't take it all together. So, for example, it says he hired moving vans already. He rented a house too. My father put the last suitcase into the back seat of a Mercedes. He was leaving Mummy with only the sab and started the engine. Then he pulled a handgun and shot me in the chest, and I was standing on the lawn and I fell. The bullet hole opened wide and my heart rolled out of my ribcage and down into a flower bed. Blood gushed rhythmically from an open wound from my eyes, my ears, my mouth. It tasted like salt and failure. The red shame of being unloved soaked the grass in front of our house, the bricks of the path, the steps to the porch. My heart spasmed along peonies like trout. Mummy snapped, and she said, get a hold of myself. Be normal, she said, right now. Because you are. Because you can be. Don't cause a scene, she told me. Breathe and sit up. I did what she asked. She was all I had left. Mummy and I tilted our square chins high as Dad drove down the hill. Then we went indoors, trashed the gifts he'd given us. In the days that followed, we got rid of the couch, the armchairs my parents bought together, tossed the wedding china, the silver, and the photographs. So that was chapter 2, part of chapter 2. And the first time I read that, it took me a couple times because I was like, wait, what? Wait, whoa. And so our narrator has a way with words, and we're seeing things from her point of view. And it was difficult because, like I said, she's a bit unreliable, and we're going to talk about the reasons why she's unreliable in 1 minute. Now, the other thing that I really liked about this book was things got really fishy, or as some of the younger generation says, sus. And it felt like I had to solve this mystery, not just because of Katie, but I was with Katie. It was I was the person on her shoulder trying to help her solve what was going on because she is not really understanding what's going on. And at the same time, she's trying to figure out why no one's telling her anything about what happened. So, one of the big deals in major pieces is this accident, and we don't know what's going on. So, in the story, they found her on the beach of the island, um, under the water, basically curled up in a ball, and no one knew why. And so she can't remember what's going on. And so she suffers these massive migraines. And the big thing about our main character, Katie, is you feel really bad for her because you don't understand what's going on and at the same time how she's coping because and this is where we got into a bit of a tricky situation. We see through Katie's eyes grief of not knowing what's going on, hatred because she's confused and no one's telling her anything, love because she's in love with one of the liars who we're going to introduce, and possibly addiction as well because every time she has a migraine she takes this handful of pills that she's prescribed. But sometimes, and there was a quote in there where she really was talking about possibly being addicted, and it was very surreal. Our character is very surreal. She's 17, almost 18 years old. She's almost an adult. She doesn't remember what happened when she was 15 years old. And for the past almost 2 years, this chunk of everything is just gone. Another thing, too, is we meet the liars. So the liars are two members of her family and then a family friend who joined in with her cousin. So we have Gat, who's our love interest. We have Johnny, and then we have Miriam. And Johnny and Miriam are her cousins. And so they are thick as thieves. And then after the accident happens, they don't respond to her. It's her trying to get back into that groove, that motion of trying to get that normalcy. And so when they say that the ending is a doozy, I was honestly shocked. I bawled at the very end of the book. Um, it really, really, really impacted me in a very big way. I literally sat there in my room crying to my fiance saying, I can't believe that this happened. And like I said, with the 5 parts, each part is different because it's going through each different piece. So part 1 is called, I can pull up the book here. It is called Welcome. And so you meet these people, you get to know these people. And what's really interesting is that this timeline of the story is 4 weeks. So in 4 weeks, she has to figure out why no one's telling her what happened, what really happened, and how to get back to that normalcy of being with her family and Gat, who she truly uttermost loves. Another big thing about this book that is interesting is that it is definitely a family drama. And it shows that families can have skeletons in the closet, and yet you're trying to move on from them, and sometimes you can't. So, one of the other pieces that goes with that is the mental illness piece. So, there is the dark side of mental illness, that grief, that hatred of yourself. So, like, Patty basically is like wondering if it would be better off if she were gone. Because she's like, I feel like I'm a burden, and she feels, or she's so sick from the migraines, it doesn't get better. And so we see that mental illness piece as well. And this book was beautifully written, in my opinion. All the poor reviews that I've seen about being boring, I couldn't put it down. And the ending, like I said, it was just, I still get goosebumps thinking about it. It gave me chills. And I know that the author wrote a prequel to this, so the next one, it's in the same series, but it came after. It's kind of like the whole Star Wars thing where they made the prequels after the originals. The prequel is out now. And I'm very tempted to pick it up. But when they say this is a haunting, well told, shocking twist ending type of book, that is definitely the truth. So do I recommend this book? Definitely. I definitely recommend this book. It is a really good book, and I'm really glad I read it. It definitely it killed me a little bit on the inside when I finished it because of how much it impacted me, and I would totally read this again. Probably not right now because it is so powerful, but I will definitely pick this up again eventually and reread it because of how great it was. So, that was what we had today. So, if you are interested in finding We Are Liars or We Were Liars, excuse me, it is at Barnes and Noble. It's on Target. It's everywhere, honestly, and I definitely recommend you picking it up and buying it. So my friends and followers, that is the end of this podcast. We will be posting podcasts every Friday on a different book, on a different topic of book. So always make sure you check out and check in to see what's going on. And if you have a book recommendation, pop it in the comments below. Be always interested in finding new books to read. And I will see you next Friday. Have a good week, everybody. Bye.